7% from 2014 to 2015. You would endanger youth literacy, as well as potentially increase class size and undermine efforts to support diverse teachers by eliminating the main program supporting effective instruction state grants, which we increased for the first time in many years. And you've taken $2.1 billion away from this program. You would potentially put higher education out of the financial grasp of students by flat funding the Pell Grant. 40% of undergraduate students, 7 million students, rely on Pell Grants to afford higher education. But while Pell covered 79% of the average cost of tuition, fees, room and board at a four-year public institution in 1975, it covers only 29% today. Our students cannot afford for us to stand pat for this. And finally, your budget would risk exacerbating the financial challenges of under-resourced rural districts by converting rural formula grants into the block grant. These districts already struggle with lower student populations, higher transportation costs, and your move to undermine their funding in this way is unacceptable. With all of this, and I just say this to you, Madam Secretary, with all sincerity, this is not going to happen. It is not going to happen. I am supportive of the recognition of the IDEA state grants, $100 million proposed increase, career and technical education, $680 million, a proposed increase for the CTE state grants. I am disappointed that adult education state grants are left with level funding, which I plan to ask you about later. You have also once again requested an increase for student loan servicing. We included new reforms, as you know, in fiscal year 2020 bill to help us conduct more oversight and ensure that borrowers are getting the help they need. Many of these ideas stemmed from an oversight hearing that this subcommittee held last year. And to be direct, I will need to see how the department implements the new requirements as I review your request for next year. With regard to charter schools, there is a place for them. They have a role in our education system. However, we have moved in the direction of creating a parallel education system. Concerns remain around issues of accountability and transparency, which to this point they have not been forthcoming. As I have said time and time again, I believe charter schools ought to be held to the same rigor, and where they fail, we need to know about it. And to close, Madam Secretary, you are clearly, again in my view, seeking to privatize public education. I hope that I have been clear that we are not going to do that, because doing so ignores the research indicating the gains we have made, ignores the many areas private education shortchanges students, ignores the very reason the federal government has needed to be involved in education, as so powerfully indicated with Brown versus the Board of Education, and ignores the spirit and the values of this country. No, instead, we need to be expanding public policies that boost education attainment, not restricting or reducing them. So I look forward to our discussion today, and now it's my pleasure to turn to my colleague, the ranking member of the subcommittee, Congressman Tom Cole from Oklahoma.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. I want to tell you this is my favorite time of year because I get to spend so much time with you in this committee here. And we're going to have dinner tonight, and it's always a delight. It honestly is a vigorous exchange of ideas and more cooperation than we tend to get credit for. And Madam Secretary, it's a particular pleasure for me to have you here today. I've known you for a long time, long before either of us were in our respective capacities, and I'll leave it to you to describe your public philosophy, but there's two things I know about you, your public education philosophy. But one is that you've always been for individualizing education. You've always been for what's the right job, role, or place for this particular student to be. And I see a lot of that in your proposals. And two, you've never been afraid to put a bold idea on the table and advance it. And I see a lot of that in this budget as well. There's a lot of boldness here, some of which I agree with, some of which, quite frankly, I don't. But that doesn't bother me. I like the idea that you're willing to break the mold and think about this, because we've got a lot of challenges, and we also, you're our chief officer overseeing probably the most diverse educational system in the world. I just think about my own district. I've got 5 colleges and universities, everything from great comprehensive state institutions to elite liberal arts institutions to regional facilities to private Christian colleges. I've got, like everybody else, most of the young people that I'm privileged to represent and their families go to public schools, but I've got charter schools, I've got private religious schools, I've got home schools, and they all do a good job. They all wrestle with the same problems, and I've got one of the most robust career tech systems any place in the country throughout Oklahoma, and certainly in my district, and I was particularly pleased with a number of proposals that you made in that regard. So I think we'll have a great discussion today. I'm looking forward to your testimony. As a former educator, I understand how important it is for our entire population to have access to quality education. Without question, education is one of our most important building blocks for success, and access to quality learning directly impacts lifelong development and unlocks each individual's potential.
Dude.
I was pleased to see that your budget request continues to prioritize resources to certain populations of children who need additional support, including children with special needs and disabilities, and Indian education and school districts whose revenues are impacted by federal presence within their boundaries. As you know, I'm a strong supporter of career and technical education, and I'm proud that my home state of Oklahoma is leading the way in innovative models for delivering cutting-edge skills that can lead to good-paying, rewarding careers for students who do not wish to pursue a 4-year liberal arts degree. And I thank you for your support of these programs, and I'm looking forward to asking you more questions about the substantial increases in your budget that your budget proposes for these programs this year. I also want to recognize your proposal to expand Pell Grants to students enrolled in short-term programs that offer a credential in a high-demand field. These opportunities offer high-payment employment in a variety of fields needed throughout my district as well as many others. Interesting to me how many times we've had, when we do member testimony, members come here and specifically push the need for career and technical education, both in terms of job opportunities and talking to their employers in terms of needed skills. So I think you've really focused on a key area here. I've spoken again to small business owners, other members of Congress who believe it's time to make Pell Grants available to individuals for enrollment in certificate-based programs. I applaud you for putting that on the table for us to consider. Madam Secretary, your budget once again proposes to eliminate, consolidate, or change over 24 programs. Some of these proposals may make sense in the context of a reauthorization or consolidation. I believe others are short-sighted. I actually agree with my friend the chairman. I'm particularly concerned about the proposal to move the successful TRIO program from a competitive grant model to the formula grants for states. That's no surprise to you. That's been a position I've held throughout my career. I'm also concerned about the proposal to consolidate several minority-serving institutions' funding into a single stream. As you know, these institutions serve distinct populations with different needs, and I'm not certain that such a change makes sense. Moreover, I feel that these often disadvantaged minority populations may be overlooked or marginalized if they're not singled out for special attention. So I'm interested in hearing your perspective on that. I also would like to acknowledge your proposal to address limitations in the student aid program. Establishing federal student aid as a separate organization is an issue I think is worth thinking about. I'm not sure we're the right people to consider it here. It really is much more of an authorizing function than we're probably equipped to handle on this committee. But I do support your efforts to streamline and create a more user-focused system for student borrowers. The Next Generation Project promises to modernize and improve the student loan infrastructure, benefiting over 40 million customers. Finally, while I tend to support block grants to
fucking
states and
getting rid of
freeing
all
school
that student
districts
debt, you
from
fucking asshole. And
bureaucracy
fucking Betsy
involved
DeVos
with
is the first one to get
administering
bounced
dozens
the
of small,
fuck out the door.
federal programs, I do have
Fucking
some
piece of
concerns
shit.
that consolidating some
Real life
programs, such as the
Cruella
charter
fucking
school program,
Deville.
could have negative consequence for the very students we hope to benefit by these proposals. And I'll have a few questions about that. Again, there's a risk here that Some states are welcoming to charter schools, others, quite frankly, are not. And so I worry a little bit about, the public sector taking money that we want to try and seed these innovative things. And I know you probably know more about this than anybody on this panel. You've got a lot of experience here, so I'm interested.
Yeah, you've
in
got a
your
lot of
perspective on that.
experience trying to
I
fucking
know
be a
you
fucking
faced
weasel
a very
scumbag
difficult
piece of
challenge in
shit.
making all the pieces fit into a tight budget. I made this point with Secretary Azar yesterday. This isn't necessarily your budget. This is the OMB's budget that you're tasked to defend, and that's what you're supposed to do. You work for the President of the United States. That's the budget process here. But obviously, you had to wrestle with a much
That's
smaller budget
not
than
true.
you might have otherwise chosen. I'm not going to ask you about that. I would expect you to be, of course, supportive of the president's position on this and overall budget priorities. But I think that does put you, just as Secretary Azar, in a difficult position. Sometimes you may well have been forced to make cuts that you did not advocate. We had a rather famous incident of that last year on Special Olympics, as I recall.
And she was the one that wanted to cut
I
him.
sometimes privately make an argument that we might agree with up here, but publicly you got to go, make the case. So again, I respect that. That's one of the obligations you undertake when you accept a position as you have. That, by the way, great personal sacrifice is not exactly a job you need, and I admire you, quite frankly, for your commitment to public service. I know that under the leadership of our Connecticut, a strong quality
That's
education
public service.
across the
They
country
see
will
public
remain a
disservice.
fundamental priority in the creation of this year's labor HHS bill, just as it was last year, frankly, just as it was when I was privileged to be chairman. And my friend has always been a good partner in that endeavor, whichever role she has, chairman or chair of the committee or ranking member. So I look forward to working with my friend once again to craft a budget that balances our many priorities and invests in our country's people and its future. I look forward to your testimony today, Madam Chairman, and I yield back the balance of my time, or Madam Secretary, and I yield back to you, the Chairman.
I thank my friend, the ranking member, and again, look forward to working with you on this, and we will put it together as we have in the past. And now I'd like to turn to the distinguished chair of the full committee for any comments that she may have. Congresswoman Nita Lowey.